ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामीति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Thank all of you very much for coming here today. I thank all the organizers for arranging this retreat. I believe it is the first time in Brisbane that we are arranging the retreat. So I hope that I can be of some service to you, and I apologize for being late. Somehow we miscalculated time when we started. So I'll be taking this talk in this first session. I'll be giving some background. The topic is live consciously, and what this means is I'll talk this theme of live consciously. I'll talk in three parts. How we live unconsciously, what makes us live unconsciously, and how we can become more conscious. And then we'll be taking three characters from the Mahabharata, three characters who act in wrong ways, but to three different degrees. I'll talk about Duryodhana, who is the most villainous character in the Mahabharata. Then Dhritarashtra, who is more like a passive villain. And Ashwathama, who is more like a one-time villain. That means one time he acts in an extremely villainous way. So we will analyze their actions in terms of the framework that I'll be developing in the first class. So we will try to analyze how the minds of people work and how it makes them act. So the first session might seem a little abstract and philosophical, but whatever I talk about, even if you don't understand in the first session, it will become clearer as we move forward to the later sessions, because I will illustrate the principles in the first session in the subsequent sessions. Now, to start with, how to live consciously means that we all go through life, but our consciousness is often caught in various things. Say for example, at a very gross level, suppose we are traveling through very beautiful scenery, but if we are fast asleep, then our consciousness is in dreamland. So then we are not conscious of whatever beautiful scenery might be there around us. So that time it's very obvious that we are not conscious of things. But even when we are awake, quite often our consciousness is not where we are, or where we are physically. And that's why we can often, two things may happen. We may miss on something good that is happening in the actual reality, or we may end up doing something bad in the actual reality. So if you're driving a car, and I was in America, and one devotee is a traffic cop. So he's telling how people get into trouble. So there was this boy, he was driving along, and on his phone he was watching a baseball match. And while he was watching that match, till then he had a clean driving record, no problem. But at that time he was watching the match, and something happened in the match, it caught his attention. And as it caught his attention went there, and at that moment, it was a school district, a child ran into the air and hit the child. Fortunately, the child was not severely damaged, But for him it was devastating. It was a permanent black mark on his driving record. So in that, this one moment of unconsciousness led to severe consequence. So here the word, I'm using the word consciousness in the sense of being attentive basically. So now in this case, we will see there are three things. The person is here, the road is here, and the phone is here. So he had hung the phone in front of his car and he was looking at the scores periodically and looking at the road. So when the phone was showing something, so that means he as the person, the observer is here, the reality is here, the phone is here. So he is meant to focus on the reality, and he had kept the phone on the front view window. So the front view window is meant to show us what is in front of us. But if the front view window has something else or is showing something else, then that person becomes disconnected from reality. So for us, if we consider that there is so we, the Bhagavad Gita explains, are the observers. We are the soul. The body is like a vehicle. In 18.61 Krishna says the Bhagavad Gita, Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. That all of us are situated in a vehicle which is the body. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Riddeshe Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. So when we are going through life, the soul is like the passenger and the body is the vehicle. Soul is the driver, we could say. Soul is the person driving the car and the body is like the car. And for us, we don't perceive the world directly. We perceive the world through the senses. The senses are integrated around the mind. Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam ghranam evacha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. Krishna says in 15.8 in the Gita, 8-9 he talks about this concept of how the soul interacts with the body. So in 15.9 he says that the five senses which are knowledge acquiring, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue and the skin, from all these inputs come in. And these inputs come on a screen. That screen is like the mind. And on this screen, which is the mind, we see an image of the outer world. So for example, so right now you are hearing me. So this is one sound coming in. Now some kids may be making some noise, that's another sound coming in. So now both these inputs are coming in on the screen of the mind. Now depending on who is the kid who is making that noise, if it's your kid or somebody you know, then, oh, what is happening? Is something wrong with him? And immediately that's what becomes prominent. And that's what we focus on. So, so if I consider the physical reality out here and the soul in here, the mind is the via media. The mind is the screen on which the physical world appears. And because there are these five senses, we can imagine that it's like a multi-screen window. Sometimes if you have a high security building, then in that high security building, there may be security center is there. And in that security center, the security in charge will be sitting and all the doors to that house, to that building, at all the doors there will be CCTV, there will be cameras. And the input from the cameras, all the cameras come on one big screen. So when we have this big screen where the inputs are coming, at that time for the child, for the observer, the security in charge, they have to see all the windows. And whenever any suspicious activity happens on any window, any activity requires attention, when they click on it, that window zooms out. And then that's where they focus. So now similarly for us, we could say there are these five windows, each of the senses. And from these the inputs are coming in. So now we have to consciously choose which window we focus on. Now these are not that simple, because sometimes from one window itself two inputs may be coming. Say for example, right now You may be hearing the sound of me speaking, you may be hearing the sound of a child making some noise. You may be, when we are driving, we may be seeing someone in front of us, but at the same time, we will be seeing someone on this road and that road. So from each of these windows, multiple inputs are coming. So there are these 5 windows, and to live consciously means to make sure that the window that deserves attention is the window that zooms out. If some other window zooms out, then what will happen is the attention will get caught somewhere else and the person will be misled. Suppose a thief comes to a child is wearing a golden ring. The child doesn't understand the value of the gold, and the thief offers the child a chocolate, a candy, a chocolate, a toffee, and the child starts eating it. And the child is enjoying the taste so much that the child is not conscious. The thief is slipping the hand behind the neck and slipping out the necklace and taking it away. So what happens? Even the mother may have told, this necklace is valuable, take care of it. But still, in that case for the child, because the chocolate is so delicious, so for that time the taste window zooms out and the touch window becomes minimized. When the touch window becomes minimized, at that time the child can't perceive anything at all, and the necklace may get, the ring or the jewel, necklace, whatever it is, may get stolen. So similarly for us, going back to the security example, all of us, when we function, to live consciously means that the window that needs attention, that is the one which we give our attention to. So our consciousness goes where the consciousness is needed to go. To complicate this example further, I talked about these 5 windows. And now, and each of these windows can also have sub-windows. But there is another 6th window which can have many windows in it. That is the window of our recollection, our memory. From our memory, this can pop up, that can pop up. So sometimes when we look at someone, and sometimes we have the experience, we meet someone, that person just keeps staring at us. Now that may be because they have some evil intention, or they may tell later that you look like someone I know. Are you related to that person? Now what is happening for them? We think, why is this person looking at me like this? It's staring. Staring is impolite. But for them, it's not just that input coming, but along with that input, some recollection has been triggered. And they're thinking about that person. Oh, that person is the same person as his brother, twin, what is it? Sister, twin, what is it? So then, a recollection window in each of us is unique. Because all of us have gone through different experiences in life, and therefore a stimulus from outside, what input, what it will trigger from inside, that we don't know. And sometimes the recollection window may get activated without any stimulus from outside also. Sometimes suddenly some thought comes up. Hey, why is this thought coming today? Suddenly we remember, that person, I had given him $50 10 years ago. He didn't give me back. Why am I remembering right now? $50 is important. Okay, but why now? Sometimes what pops up from the recollection window, we just don't know. So for us, the mind is like the screen on which the outer world should be reflected or should be depicted, and then we can respond to it. But the mind, because it depicts many things apart from the outer world, or it depicts only one part of the outer world, so therefore we tend to become unconscious. So unconscious here doesn't mean that we have lost consciousness. We are not like fainted. We are not swooned. But it is that we are no longer conscious of things, because we are caught in our own thoughts. Now, this is, we could say, the broad way in which the mechanism of the mind functions. That there are the 5 senses, and then there are the 5 senses which are like windows on the inner screen, and there is the recollection. And on in these, it's not just pictures photos that appear. Movies also appear. Because what happens? Some perception and some recollection may combine together. And then the whole movie will start playing over. So it may be that, say in India, when the Cricket World Cup is going on, then cricket mania goes on. Sometimes we may see young people walking on the streets and they are swinging imaginary bats. They are swinging imaginary bats on the road. Now what is happening? They are walking on the road, there is no bat, there is no ball, there is no ground. But there is a cricket match going on in their mind. And in that cricket match, they are stars. They think, oh, this ball will come, I'll hit it like this. So here what has happened, it's not only a movie that is being played in the mind, but that movie that is being played in the mind is also being enacted at some degree at a physical level. So they are not conscious at all of the road where they are walking, of people who are watching them. They are conscious only of the mind and how they are responding to it. So basically, the soul is here, the mind is here, the world is here. And the soul's consciousness is meant to go through the mind to the world and help us focus on the particular thing in the world that we need to interact with, that we need to do. But instead, on the mind, something else will appear. Either some other irrelevant stimuli from outside or some other irrelevant memory from inside. And these two may combine in unpredictable combinations. Now beyond these, this is the general principle in which the mind works. But for each one of us, we have our conditionings. We have our individual natures. And as per our individual natures, each one of our minds works in different ways. So the mind has impressions within it. And the impressions within the mind become its propositions. That means whatever the mind has done previously, it suggests again. That is how the mind repeatedly works. Say, for example, somebody has repeatedly, if they have a phone browser or computer on which they have repeatedly visited a particular site. So say they have visited Bollywood.com. So many times they have visited Bollywood.com. Now they come for a spiritual program, and in a spiritual program they hear about the Bhagavad Gita. And now they want to know what is the Bhagavad Gita. So they go and type Bhagavad Gita. They type B. And what happens? Immediately Bollywood comes up. So what has happened over here? They typed B. They wanted to go to Bhagavad Gita, but it ended up Bollywood. This is because their previous choices are stored in the browser of their device. The previous choices are stored in the browser as preferences, and they keep popping up. So similarly for us, our mind is like that browser where previous choices are stored. So whatever actions we have done in the past, they are stored in the mind as impressions. And those impressions come as the propositions. Propositions means do this. What about this? What about that? They come as proposals from the mind. And if we are not conscious, if say somebody is just typing B and they're not very conscious, then Bollywood.com comes, Bollywood opens up and they start watching Bollywood. Okay, let me look at this movie review, let me look at this movie trailer, let me look at what is going on in this actor's life, what is happening between this couple, that. And then they spend a lot of time, maybe half an hour they spend, and hey, I wanted to visit Bhagavad Gita, what happened? So, because they're not conscious, whatever is the auto proposition that comes up, they just go along with it. So similarly for each one of us, the mind, based on the impression stored in it, the mind gives some propositions. And those propositions they become like our default actions. We are not consciously aware that we are doing those actions, but we just do them. And these impressions, they propel us, or we could say impel us to act in particular ways. And broadly speaking, these impressions can be of two types. There can be, now Sanskrit and English, they are two different languages. So I will first explain the concept and then we will look at the terms. There are some impressions within the mind can be positive and some impressions can be negative. Positive impressions means some people come into a room and when they're visiting as a guest to somebody's house, actually they enter into a house, say, actually if you move this sofa over here, you put this picture over here, you put this flower set over here, this will look so much better. And somebody might be staying in that house for 3 months and they're thinking, how to rearrange this house to look good. But some people just get it. And now it's not that they're consciously thinking, it just comes to them. Some people are trying to say, write a letter and they spend hours and hours thinking, how should I write this sentence, this word. This is not exactly expressing it. Somebody else comes along and just in 5 minutes they get the right words. Now where do they get it? So these are the impressions that are stored within us which are positive. And when the positive impressions come up, so in the both cases, when the impressions are positive or negative, at that time, these impressions come up without much conscious thought. So somebody who is good at music, some people some kids, they pick up a kartal and after a few tries they start playing nicely. And some other people, they try for hours and months and still they don't get it right. So how do some people just get it right? That is because certain impressions, good impressions, are stored. And those good impressions come as default propositions. So we could call these as instincts. Instincts are, in terms of biology, they are called as programmed intelligence. Animals are also very intelligent in many ways. The way a bird builds a nest, the way a sparrow builds a nest using simple straws. Even the best architectural engineer or civil engineer using straws to build a nest like that will be quite difficult. So the animals do have intelligence, but it is instinctive. That means they don't consciously think, okay, let me put this straw here, put this straw here. Just they get it. So all of us have certain instincts. And those instincts, so basically whenever the impression comes up, when something from an impression comes up, that means we don't consciously use our intelligence to analyze it. It just comes up with us. Now of course we may use intelligence to further refine the proposition. So if somebody gets an idea, let's play this music like this. Somebody says, let's write like this. And they may think further and they may get further ideas out how to improve it. But right from the beginning itself, something good or something better than what comes up in others' minds comes up in their mind. So the impressions that are positive can be called as instincts. When the Pandavas were living in the forest, the Pandavas lived in the forest twice. Does anyone know the two occasions? First was, yeah? When they were? They were in the forest. Okay, that's true.
And they were exiled for many years.
Okay, they were exiled. Anyone else?
And they were born.
Okay, but okay, maybe my question was wrong. Yeah, so Pandavas went to the forest 2 times. So yes. So one is well known when they were exiled. So they were actually born in the forest because Pandu had taken retirement and they came back to the kingdom. Then we know about the famous time in the forest when they were exiled. But before that, they were in the Varnavarth house of lac from where they were burnt. And when they were burnt, they fled to the forest. They escaped, yeah, thank you. So at that time, they came to while living incognito, they came to the kingdom of Drupada. And there Draupadi's Swayamvar was going on. And in Draupadi's Swayamvar, Arjuna won the hand of Draupadi. Now at that time, the Pandavas were dressed as Brahmanas. So now actually Drupada was a concerned father, and he wanted to know who are the people who have actually got the hand of my daughter, who have married my daughter. So he invited them to his house for a feast. And when they came in, the big hall, in which they sat on some seats, and he said, I'll just come in a few minutes, you relax. And on the other side of the hall, there was a long table. On that table, he had kept various items. So on one side, where the items are related with Brahminical activity. So there were some sacred texts, there were some fire sacrifice utensils, the spoon, the ladle, and things which would interest some Brahmanas. Then second, there were some weapons. Different kinds of weapons were there. Then third, there were some things related with Vaishyas. So there was some equipment for agriculture, there was some equipment related with cows, for cow protection. And the last were some tools of artisans related to the Shudras. So the Pandavas sat down, they relaxed, they looked around, and they saw the table and they got up. And all of them went straight to the weapons. And they picked up, one of them picked up a bow, another picked up a mace, another picked up a lance. And they all started talking, this is good, this is not that good. You know, we had that weapon, that was much better. No, but this seems better. And within minutes, they were lost in talk. And behind a closed door, Drupada and his son Drishtadyumna were watching. And when they saw the Pandavas absorbed, they started smiling. So they are not Brahmanas, they are Kshatriyas. They are Kshatriyas. So, what happened is that for them, because they were Kshatriyas, the Kshatriya instinct naturally drew their attention towards weapons. Although they were devotees, but still their attention didn't go to Shastra. They would study Shastra, but their primary service was with weapons. They were naturally attracted towards weapons. So this is the example of a Kshatriya instinct. So we all have certain instincts, certain things which we are good at. And we can know our instincts by noting consciously what we note automatically. By noting consciously what we note automatically. You know, if we come into a room, some of us may immediately note, you know, what kind of dress who is wearing. We might have a more visual aesthetic sense. Some of us may note, okay, you know, what kind of place is this? Okay, this looks like a very expensive place. This looks like this looks like this. So we might have more financial sense. Now when I come into a room, the first thing I notice is all the notice boards. And I become like a self-appointed proofreader of everything. I say, this spelling is not right, this spelling is not right. It just, my brain works like that. So I have a reasonably strong language instinct. So there are so all of us, we note certain things automatically. And sometimes we can't understand why others don't note it. Sometimes, many times, especially Indians in India, they use English for very functional purposes. And in the process, they massacre English grammar. So there are notices which just don't make any sense. So if there's so many spelling mistakes, then I tell somebody, what is it? Please change, there's a typo over here, change it. So often the response is, everybody understands, why don't you understand? So for me, the language instinct is very strong and I notice certain things very quickly. Of course, I also make mistakes, but when I make some mistakes in my writing, I feel embarrassed. But there are others, when they make mistakes, they don't feel embarrassed, they feel annoyed that you have pointed out the mistake. So, if we note consciously what we notice automatically, that points to our instincts. So again, why are we talking about instincts over here? I'm talking about how our mind functions. So so there are all these windows which open up, which are there in the mind. So which window will zoom up? So for somebody with a strong language instinct, the text will all zoom up. For somebody with a strong fashion instinct, what kind of fashion, what kind of dress who is wearing, that's what will zoom up. For somebody who has a very strong environmental instinct, they will say, okay, who is using plastic bags? How dare they use? So what happens is, certain things, they just zoom up within us automatically. So these are related. Now instincts, some instincts we are born with, and some instincts come by cultivation also. But instincts cause certain things within our inner screen to zoom up. And so generally I'm using the word instincts in a positive sense. It is something which, so instinct is like programmed intelligence. It's intelligent choice, intelligent perception, but it is something which is intelligent without conscious attention, conscious thought. It just automatically comes up. There are negative impressions also within the mind, and those we can call as impulses. Impulses means these are unintelligent or anti-intelligent stimuli that pop up. Say somebody is an alcoholic. As soon as they come into an establishment, the first thing they will think, okay, is there a bar here? Where can I drink? So that is the impulse that will pop up within them. So all of us have certain impressions from the past which cause certain impulses to pop up. Now these impulses, when they pop up, so like going back to the example of this boy who got caught in watching the match on his phone. Now, he had an interest in that subject, an interest in, say, the sports, in baseball. And while he had an interest in baseball, it was not just the screen that distracted him. It was first of all in his mind, because of his interest in the baseball, he felt, no, I want to know what is the score. And even when I'm driving, I can't wait till I get home. I want to stay updated about the score. So that impulse can sometimes be about trivial things, and sometimes it can be about very dangerous things also. But whatever it is, it's the impulse that comes up. So just as some people may have a language instinct and some people may just not have that language instinct. It doesn't matter to them whether things are written properly or not. It's like that, all of us have certain impulses, and some of us may just, all of us have some impulses, all of us some don't have some impulses. So for example, somebody has never drunk alcohol, they pass by a bar, there is no impulse to drink that pops up within them. With some people, the impulse to drink pops up. And depending on how much they have drunk, that impulse will pop up more forcefully. So when that impulse pops up, at that time, by default, if you consider the screen of the mind, the screen gets filled. And then it is possible, say for example, when we are working on a device, some window suddenly pops up. Now it is possible to minimize what has popped up. But for that, we have to be conscious. Oh, I was doing this work, from when did this pop up? But if say some student is studying and is anyway bored with studies, and then suddenly a pop-up comes up about your favorite cricket match, some news comes up. Then anyway, they're bored with this, so immediately they're caught in this. And then they watch that and they click on that and they go somewhere else. And suddenly an hour may go away. May not realize it also. So similarly for us, either based on our instincts or based on our impulses. Instincts I have discussed earlier. Now let's focus on impulses. Based on our impulses, we may be doing certain things, but certain other things certain thoughts pop up within us. And when they pop up within us, then if we are not conscious, we get carried away by them. Once we get carried away by them, then after that, there is just like when a person watches one move, say somebody is studying, but then some YouTube notification comes up. Hey, your favorite channel has released a new video. And then you look at that, and when you look at that, it doesn't end over there. What happens? YouTube gives a series of other related videos. And then you watch one video, then another series of related videos comes up. So like that for us, whenever an impulse pops up, it starts showing us something. And then from one leads to the second, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth. It just goes on and on. So for all of us, we become unconscious of certain things because we become ultra conscious of some things. So there is no such thing as, we could say, complete unconsciousness. In our philosophy, unconsciousness is also a state of consciousness. In medical science, when we say somebody is fainted, that means they're unconscious, they're no longer conscious. But in our philosophy, when we say somebody is unconscious, all that it means is the soul is here, the body is here, the brain is here. See, the soul's consciousness is coming. Okay, the soul is here, the mind is here, the body is here. The soul's consciousness is coming through the mind to the body. But when we say somebody is unconscious, all that it means is the soul's consciousness is not being expressed through the body to the outer world. But the soul is still conscious. Soul's consciousness is coming through the body, from the soul to the mind, and because the brain is damaged, because the person is injured, so the consciousness is not coming out to the physical level. So in that sense, unconsciousness is not lack of consciousness. It is just lack of consciousness at a particular level of reality. The consciousness is there, but it is simply caught at the level of the thoughts. It is not coming to the physical level. So same way, when we are saying live consciously, what it means is that our consciousness needs to be attentive to where it needs to be. But based on the impression stored within us, the consciousness gets misdirected in particular directions. And when that consciousness gets misdirected in particular directions, we become conscious of that thing and we become unconscious of other things. So, this one devotee from Russia, he was telling me about how when the Soviet government was there was a lot of poverty. So they had caricatures of what was the condition of people. There was one caricature. He said that there was this in a family. They got the news on TV that the price of vodka has gone up. So when the price of vodka has gone up, so then the son fearfully asked the father, "Dad, now the price of vodka has gone up. Will you drink less?" And the father says, "No, you will eat less." No, you will eat less. Now, what father would want to deprive his own children of food so that he can drink more? But what has happened over here? The consciousness has got so attached to drinking vodka that the normal human concern that a parent has for the child and has become desensitized to that. So this is an extreme example, and I'll talk when I talk about Dhritarashtra, how something similar happened to him in his interaction with the Pandavas. So when we become too attached to something, our consciousness stays fixated on that thing alone. Means because of the impulse to drink is so strong that is what pops up, and one has to drink, and everything else, forget it. If after getting this other things work, it's fine. If for getting these other things have to be given up, doesn't matter. So sometimes the mind becomes so conditioned that certain stimuli not only pop up but they dominate the mind. Now sometimes there are some programs which are like viruses. When those programs come up, they start off, and once they start off, you try to stop. There is no cross to stop it. There is no minimize. You try to quit it, it doesn't quit. So just the only way sometimes the program starts off is that you just try to reboot it. So like that, sometimes certain habits become so compulsive that the thought comes in and just don't know how to get rid of this thought. It just dominates the screen of the mind, and people can't think of anything else. So the impulses that we have, they, as I said, impulses are unintelligent or sometimes anti-intelligent also. Whereas instinct is programmed intelligence. So when the impulses, so either way, our impulses or our instincts, they both direct our consciousness. If we can channel our instincts, if we can develop our instincts, then our consciousness can be directed constructively. But if our impulses grow, our consciousness gets directed destructively. And for all of us, the mind is popping up various stimuli at various times. And we need to respond to it. So to live consciously means that we are aware of our mind and we are aware of the world. And then we have to see whether what the mind is saying and the world is saying in proper alignment or they are misaligned. If we get carried away by what the mind is saying, then we may do something which has counterproductive effects in the outer world. So we have to become conscious of the mind and conscious of the world. In the next session, we will start with the case of Dhritarashtra, where I'll talk about how his mind was distorted by his attachment to the kingdom. I'll summarize and then we can have a few questions. So I spoke about what does live consciously mean. The three parts: what makes us unconscious, then, or rather, first is how we live unconsciously, what makes us unconscious, and then how we can become conscious. So to understand where our consciousness is directed, I talked about the mind. So the mind is the inner screen on which the outer world is depicted. The mind is like a big screen on which inputs from the five senses come up. And now each of these windows are a big screen. They can also have sub-windows. And then there is a big sixth window, that is the recollection window. And sometimes the outer perception and the inner recollection, they can combine in unpredictable ways and suddenly they can start off a movie. So although all of us may perceive the same outer situation, the inner thoughts that start within each one of us will vary. Because what becomes prominent in our inner screen and how it combines with memories from the past, that varies from person to person. So the mind, when some unwanted window pops up, then we become conscious of that and we are no longer conscious of that which is important. So to live consciously means to be aware what is appearing on our inner screen and how it relates with what is in the outer world. Then I talked about how what pops up on the inner screen varies in different people. That is based on the instincts and the impulses. Instincts are like programmed intelligence. We all are good at something. Some thoughts just come, whether it is language or the music or aesthetics of a room or interior design or whatever, home design, whatever. Certain things just come to us instinctively. And that means that the inner screen just gives a proposition, this is what we should do it. So our past impression, our past actions, they become impressions and the impressions become propositions. So I give the example of Bollywood and Bhagavad Gita. And the propositions may be good if it's instincts which direct us in intelligent ways, or they can be bad if they're impulses. Impulses are usually short term and they're concerned with immediate pleasures. And they are non-intelligent or anti-intelligent. So it may be for somebody who may be drinking so much that they just can't think of anything else. That's what prominently pops up in their inner screen. And they will become desensitized to others' basic needs also. So for each of us, when we want to live consciously, we need to understand how our mind works and how the mind sometimes allows us to see the things properly or sometimes it distorts our vision. So to become conscious of our mind and to become conscious of the world and to become conscious of any mismatch between the two, that is foundational to living consciously. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes, please. You had a question? Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't notice.
You talked about the instinct. The basic instinct, what the soul has got, it's already predetermined. Is that what you meant to say by the instinct what we normally have, the personality or the nature of the human?
Okay. Is our instinct, the basic instinct of the soul has it predetermined? Well, I'm not talking much about the soul here. I'm talking primarily about the mind. The soul is presently almost like inactive. The soul is a source of consciousness, but the soul is not conscious of spiritual reality. So the soul, we could say, is eternally meant to love Krishna. But that is almost like dormant. It's like, say, giving back the earlier example of the security in charge who is watching the outer screen, watching the screen on which inputs from the various doors in that high security building are coming. So that security in charge is so absorbed in watching the screen that they don't even notice what is going on in the room nearby. Their consciousness is completely glued on the screen. So like that, the soul currently is so fixated on the mind and the world outside. The soul is not even aware of one's own spirituality. Purusha prakritistohi bhungte prakritijan gunan karanam gunasangosya sat asat yoni janmasu. So Purusha prakritistohi, the soul becomes situated in material nature because of bhungte prakritijan gunan, because of the desire to enjoy material things. The soul is distinct from matter, but because the soul has a desire to enjoy, the soul's consciousness gets caught in matter. And so right now, we are not talking about the soul's instincts at all. We are talking about the mind's. So the soul is practically not conscious of itself at all. But that is not so relevant for us because spirituality can be cultivated by the thoughts at the level of the mind as well as by spiritual objects in the outer world. But the important thing is, the soul is almost like dormant. Say a child is watching a horror movie and the child completely forgets where I am. Child's consciousness is completely caught in whatever is happening on that screen. So similarly for us, our consciousness is more or less caught in the screen of the mind and in the world which is being depicted on that screen. So when we are talking about instincts, we are simply talking about the particular screen and what pops up on that screen. The instincts are related with the body, not the soul, with the subtle body, that is the mind. The soul in a sparrow's body might in the future life come into a human body. But in the sparrow's body, the soul knows how to make a nest. In a human body, the soul doesn't know. Because it's got nothing to do intrinsically with the soul. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes, please.
So based on what you described, if we want to make any fundamental changes in our lives, we have to go through the process of accessing the subconscious and make positive changes on the subconscious level. Do we always have to go through that process, or is there a way to bypass the mind and that whole process of purification? Can we separate ourselves?
Okay, so if we want to change something fundamentally in ourselves, do we need to go to the subconscious and change that, or can we just bypass it? It can work both ways. Basically, if we firstly become conscious that if I'm working on a particular machine, say if my computer is spoiled and somebody has given me their computer, and then in their computer certain preferences are stored. So if I want to go to Bhagavad Gita, but as soon as I type B, Bollywood comes, then I'm not interested in Bollywood. But if I'm aware that Bollywood is going to pop up, then still because I'm using that machine, Bollywood will pop up, but then I will cancel it and I will put Bhagavad Gita. And then I'll go there. So like that, sometimes we just become aware of the conditioning. It is present and we can't immediately get rid of it. But if we distance ourselves from it, we identify it instead of identifying with it. We identify the mind, don't identify with the mind. So if we just identify the conditioning, then we can distance ourselves from it. And then it will be like a thought which is there, it is a proposition that is there, but we don't pay much attention to it. And gradually, as we start doing other activities, that proposition will recede into the background. So the first step is identification. We have to identify whatever our default conditionings are. And then how to address them? One is with alertness, we just distance ourselves. Another level is, so we could say that there is the soul here, there is the mind here, there is the body here. Now in the mind, we could just become more mindful, more aware, and then we distance ourselves from those conditions. Another is we practice bhakti yoga, we purify ourselves of it. Then bhakti yoga purification means new impressions are formed on it so powerful that the past impressions just go back. So for example, there might be some data in our computer. Now we don't even know what all is there in our computer. In the computer we may just be able to press format and delete everything. But we can't format our mind like that. But if we just put in new data, we visit new sites, and the new sites, over a period of time, they become the preferences. So the old ones don't matter so much. But the old ones are coming very forcefully, and sometimes it depends on different conditionings in different people. Some conditions may be very strong, then they may need to be consciously dealt with. Okay, where is this coming from? Okay, this is what happened to me, and because of this, I am thinking like this. So then, but that stimulus is no longer there now, so I don't have to worry about it. So we may have to consciously connect with that. So somebody is very fearful of water. Now they may go to a sacred river like Ganga, Yamuna, and still they will be very fearful. Now if somebody just sprinkles some water on them during Aarti, hey, don't sprinkle water on me. Now, it may be that in the childhood they may have had some trauma where they had been about to drown and they were saved, so they got fear of water. So now in that case, they may have to do some cognitive processing. Okay, now I am associating this fall of water on my head with that stimulus, with that event. But that event is not happening now. So then sometimes understanding the cause of a particular phenomena, going back into the subconscious, that helps. But because the subconscious contains so many things, unless it is essential, there is no need. Because we might just get lost in it completely. Because it's like sometimes, if you look at the data, if you have been using a computer for a long time, and then we download many things, we save many things, and we wonder, where did this file come from? I don't remember. Sometimes we search for one file, and 50 other files come up. Where did these files come from? Did I ever download in my computer? I don't even remember it. So like that, there is a lot in our subconscious. So only if a conditioning is very strong, which cannot either be neglected or which cannot be purified, that means which cannot be replaced directly, or it will be eventually replaced by bhakti practice. But if it is not happening immediately enough for us, then some cognitive processing to understand where it is coming from can help us in addressing it. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? We'll come to you. Yeah, yes.
Hare Krishna. We were talking about the impulsive and intuitions. Sometimes they get clashed together so much because impulsive are short term. So they just impose our intuition. So is there a way that you propose now, like cognitive way? Is it the way to discriminate or some kind of intelligence, or how do we handle that part? Because the decision has to be done quickly and we just get carried away with the things.
So how do we differentiate between the impulsive and say the intuition or the instinctive?
Instinct, yeah.
And sometimes they may just get combined together.
Yeah.
Say somebody may naturally know, they may be very good at shooting a gun. And they know how to hit a target. Expert at it. Some people have to practice so much and still the target is here and their gun goes over there. Some people, they are just accurate at shooting a gun. But suppose somebody can shoot a gun accurately and they have a very strong angry impulse within them. Then that is a deadly combination. They get angry with someone and before they understand, even they understand what they are doing, they pick it up again and shot that person. Hey, what did I do? Why did I do that? So the instincts can sometimes be misused by the impulses. you could say. So some people may be very good at language, but sometimes they may use that language to speak so sarcastically that they may hurt people for a lifetime. They may create scars on the hearts of people for a lifetime. So sometimes some people get angry, and even in their anger they are incoherent. So you know that they are angry, but what they are speaking doesn't make much sense, so it doesn't hurt much also. But sometimes some people, they are very articulate, and when they are angrily articulate, then their articulateness hurts the other person a lot also. So in that sense, having good instincts and bad impulses, that can be a deadly combination. So we need to, when this combination is there, then actually the person has to work to curb the impulses. If they don't work to curb the impulses, then they can act in destructive ways. So if we understand that I have a particular impulse, then we have to be alert. In this situation I tend to get angry. And just like if we are going on a road and we know that this road has a bump ahead, then we slow down. So similarly, if we just observe ourselves a little bit, we can make out. In these situations I tend to get angry. Say today I've had a bad day. One thing went wrong, second thing went wrong, third thing went wrong. Now is fourth interaction. If this it turns out to be negative, starts going wrong, I'm going to explode. So then better avoid the interaction, defer it for another day. So we can ourselves by observation understand the triggers for our impulses. The trigger is the external stimulus which activates the impulse. So for an alcoholic, I was at Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in America in Denver. So they're telling that we were discussing how different alcoholics have different triggers. So for example, if this is the home and this is the office, there's a straight path from the home to the office, but along the way there is a bar, which they have frequented repeatedly. Then for them, the straightest path may not be the best path. Because while going along that path, this impulse will come. So they may want to take another path. Although it may take more time, actually it will save more time. For them particularly. So if we become aware of our triggers, then we can avoid those triggers. Stay away from those triggers, and thus we can protect ourselves from being hijacked by our impulses. Okay? Yes?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Last question.
Okay.
Prabhu, what is the reason? How do we get these impulses and instincts?
Okay. Where do we get these instincts and impulses? It's to some extent by our past life karma. All of us have particular karma which we have done in the past life. So based on that, certain impulses, certain instincts come out. Some babies, even when they are in their cribs, even when they not started walking, they are looking out of their cribs and thinking, when am I going to take over the house? And not necessarily in a bossy sense. Actually, if they grow up and they start organizing, they are able to organize also well. So Krishna says, Ishvara Bhava. At one level to think, I am Ishvaro aham bhogi. I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, this demoniac mentality. But at another level, in 18.43, he says, Ishvara Bhava is a characteristic of the Kshatriyas. So, in life, in the world, somebody has to take control, somebody has to lead, somebody has to delegate, somebody has to organize. So some people have that instinct. So that comes from the past life. The Kshatriya instinct can come from a past life. The Brahmana instinct can come from a past life. Similarly, certain impulses may come from past lives. So even among babies, some babies may, from their birth itself, they may be very angry. And some babies are relatively peaceful. All babies may cry, but some babies, when they cry, it's more out of need. And some babies, when they cry, it is out of anger. So the degrees vary. So these come from our past life. They also come from our upbringing. broadly speaking, I was going to discuss this more elaborately later, but I'll mention it now. But broadly speaking, there are three factors that affect our behavior. That is our past life, our childhood, and our neighborhood. Our childhood is our upbringing, our neighborhood, we can say, is our association. So, what we did in our past life creates some impressions, creates some instincts. How we were brought up creates some impressions and instincts, creates some instincts and impulses, and the kind of people we associate with, that also does that. Now, apart from all these three, we all have our free will. So, the free will is not controlled by these. Just like what appears on the inner screen, it's a proposition. It's not an imposition. Just because say Bollywood.com has opened up on my browser, that doesn't mean I have to watch it. But that is a proposition that has come. So, our free will still remains distinct. And how we use our free will is up to us. But sometimes the proposition may become so forceful that it appears as if we don't have free will. And then beyond that is Krishna's mercy. By Krishna's mercy, all these past impressions, their force can start going down. The negative impression, their force can go down. So, our past life karma, our upbringing, our association, our free will, and Krishna's mercy. All these five shape the way we act. Okay? So, thank you very much. Shri Prabhupada ki.